days go by. Family. Hey guys, I have something very important to tell you. I am quitting YouTube forever. See, that's what I'm saying. This is what people do. This is what they do. Hey, what's up, everybody? This podcast is actually not going to go on the other audio platforms. This is just going to be a YouTube exclusive thing because it just pertains to the YouTube viewers. Now, I've read in quite a few comments recently. People are a little upset, a little angry at the fact that I didn't give anybody a heads up that the channel name was changing to GeniusBrain and I was going to be doing a podcast from here on out. But I did. Did it on Instagram a few times, did it on Twitter quite a few times, but I guess a lot of people don't follow me on my other platforms, so fuck you guys. No, I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, let me just give you the thought behind why I didn't decide to say it on my YouTube channel. Number one, I just didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Specifically because the content that I have on this podcast is essentially me. And so when I was reading comments like, yo, how are we supposed to know that this was you? I don't know, fucking bitch. Maybe the face that's on the thumbnail, my actual fucking face. But other than that, I understand. Like, I'm just being a bitch. I understand what you mean by it. It's just I didn't want to make a big deal of it. Like, I kind of decided to go all in, and that's just who I am as a person. I didn't want to just put like one foot in the water and then see what happens. I'm kind of more of like a dive all in type of person. It's what I did with film. It's what I do with YouTube in general. So for a while now, people have been asking me to start a podcast, and I just couldn't add something else onto my plate. Number one, I have a lot of businesses that I'm looking over right now, obviously with other partners, but there's still a lot of work to be done with that. On top of that, I'm still writing. I still want to do film, so I'm still doing that. I'm still acting. I'm still auditioning. So there's a lot of things going on right now. And one of the things that I told myself this year was that I wasn't going to go back into that old habit of just trying to be a jack of all shits, right? Meaning that I'm trying to be good at everything, because that's not possible. You have to, in order to master a craft or really be good at something, you have to just focus it one at a time. And so in order for me to do that in a creative space, I have to figure this out, and you guys might be at this crossroads one day too, is where you have to really figure out what your, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for, like the overarching goal is in your life. And it turned out for me, it was to feed my artistry, meaning that I had to feed something that made me happy. Yeah, money makes me happy. I always joke about money. And, obviously when it comes to this podcast, was it a great financial move in terms of my channel? Probably not, man. Like, I'm not really making much off this channel now, especially ever since I started going to the podcast. Some of you motherfuckers act like I abandoned the fucking shit out of you, which I did not. It was just a different platform. So that's why I'm taking the time to explain myself right now. I wanted to do a podcast, and I had to do it all the way because I didn't want to half-ass things, which is basically what I'm getting to. Podcasts, number one, it's a great platform for me. Why? Because it's what I do in general. It's something that I already do. When I was helping start up JK News, it was almost like an extension of what I was already doing on my channel. I was taking like hot topics, which if you guys watched me starting 7 to 8 years ago, it's essentially what JK News was, right? Or is right now. It's just talking shit about having fun with a current hot topic, whether it was something that happened on the news or whatever, or it would be thoughts that I had. And so that's what this podcast is, right? This podcast is my vlogs, but the difference is that you guys get to have a longer format of it. I get to speak longer and clarify what I'm saying, joke a little longer, and then on top of that, bounce off ideas off of somebody else. And that person who's brought onto the podcast can basically give me more material, or they could change my mind, or we can have an open discussion about certain things that we can agree or disagree on. Either way, it's the same thing as those vlogs, but it's expanded. It's basically my vlogs on crack. And that's what Genius Brains is. Another question that people have been asking is, what is Genius Brains? And I read a comment where somebody was like, don't you think that it's kind of conceited to call yourself Genius Brain? You dumb fuck. If you listen to the first podcast, Genius Brains is a sarcastic saying. Like it's what I used to say to people who I thought were always trying to be too smart, you know what I mean? Or they were way smarter than I am. So I'd be like, what's going on, Genius Brains? And it's basically sarcasm. It's basically somebody who's dumb. And that's basically what I am. I'm a dumb person just with a lot of thoughts and ideas and a lot of jokes. And Genius Brain Podcast, if you guys want to know what this is about, we're just going to be talking about anything and everything in terms of topics, current events, news, and just what I've been thinking about during the week that we could just have fun and shoot the shit about. And I didn't want Genius Brains to be predicated on having a lot of celebrity guests. And I know that's counterintuitive to what a lot of people think I should or shouldn't do. Because if you do have guests who are prevalent in this space, which I will have, I just didn't want this podcast to be based on who comes on here rather than the content that's being spoken about or talking. My English is terrible. Anyways, when I first started doing YouTube, I didn't collaborate with a lot of people. And there was a reason behind this. It wasn't because I didn't like people on this space. It had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with the fact that before I started to work with people, I had to create a foundation for myself. I had to really solidify myself as a creator because I didn't want to work on a project with somebody else and then people know who I am from that and say, well, you got your start because this person gave you a hand. They gave you a leg up. And I fucking hated that shit. I hated that stuff because it was very, it kind of minimized like the hard work that I put in to get where I was going to be or where I was at. Because I didn't want somebody to say that my success was based on somebody else's hard work. And that's really what it boiled down to. And the same thing with this podcast. I didn't want this podcast to be based on the guests that I bring. I want it to be based on the conversations that we have on this space, right? So Genius Brain, I'm bringing in anybody that I know, somebody that I find interesting, somebody that has an interesting story that wants to tell it on this podcast or talk about a topic that we can just go back and forth with. And celebrities too, that they have an interesting story too, but everybody has an interesting story. It's just a lot of people don't have the platform to go ahead and tell it to people. And that's generally how I gain all my stories, right? I talk to a lot of people. It's who I am as a person. I have a lot of different friends. I have a lot of conversations with random people all the fucking time, which is why I always have something to share. I'm always going out. I'm always up and about. I'm not afraid to have a conversation with a stranger. And this is how I, number one, collect stories. This is how I have stories. This is how I experience life and see things with a different lens compared to most people. So that's what Genius Brains is about. It's an interesting move. I understand. And if another thing that people were asking was, does that mean that we'll only see podcast content on this page? No, it doesn't. So the podcast is going to be my main focus this year. I want to tackle that. And remember what I said, I can't be a jack of all shits. I have to focus on one thing. But the other thing is that I do still create and I'm still writing all the time. The difference is that I don't want to have the pressure of having to create a new series or these sketches on a consistent basis when I don't feel inspired to do it. It's an art form, right? And when you're trying to force somebody to create art consistently on the space without break, and specifically when it comes to sketches and short films, they rarely turn out really good. In my personal opinion, it's just the same shit you see over and over. So, when we did Gook, Gook was like a 1 to 2 year process. It took a minute. And the reason why we got into Sundance and we sold it to Netflix was because of the time that we took for it. I'm not saying that all the stuff that I'm going to do is going to be of that caliber, but I want the time to go ahead and develop that. But in the meantime, Genius Brains is there. I want Genius Brain to be that podcast that gets you through your day. I want it to be the podcast that you sit for, number one, laughs or insight or just great conversation to follow you throughout the day on your commute or whatever. So obviously that's going to be highly based on you guys loving it and sharing it. If you guys love it, make sure that you do share Genius Brain Podcast. It's on all audio platforms, specifically iTunes, Spotify, CastBox, and a few other stuff too. You guys will see it there. So what you guys can do, if you guys love it, only if you love it, which I'm pretty sure you do because I love you, and if you don't love me, then fuck you, is go to iTunes and give us that 5-star rating. It's going to really help out. And I'm here. Like, I don't want to leave this space. I just want to constantly be able to evolve and move forward. I'm not sure if you guys are at that crossroads yet. I'm not sure if you guys are at that crossroads yet in your life, but there is going to be a time where if you're somebody that likes to push your boundaries, where you're going to start to feel stagnant. you're going to start to feel that even though you're successful in what you're doing now, there's something more that you want to reach for. And it's a hard concept for people who aren't motivated to really understand and wrap their head around. Because in their minds, they're like, it's working, you're making a lot of money. Why do you want to fuck with this formula? It's not about that sometimes. If everything was just about money, then I probably would have just worked a stable, regular job. And when I first started on this platform, I didn't know that you could make money like that. It wasn't something that was on the table for me. For me, when I started YouTube, I just wanted to be like the best stand-up comedian ever. And I wanted to find the means to do that. And YouTube was the platform to get me there. Later on, I found out that stand-up wasn't something that I actually wanted. It's something that I still enjoy till this day. But the only thing that I really wanted to do was be able to tell stories and connect with people. And that essentially is what this podcast is. That's what YouTube is. That's what all these social media platforms are. And so, yeah, Genius Brains is that next step for me. So don't worry. I'm here to stay. I'm not going anywhere. And I just, and you guys understand too, like, what if I put out that video and I said, I'm done with YouTube forever, like all these fucking YouTube fucks do. And clearly they're not. They're just doing it for the views. Like, I just don't want to do that. And even if my thumbnails or my topics were a little racy, I always had that topic within the video. And I still want to stick to that person that I am. So, yeah, man. Come with me on this journey, man. Genius Brains is here to stay, man. It's going to be great conversations. And remember, if you guys want me to talk about a certain topic, it could be anything. I'm talking about a news article that you saw or something controversial that's going on. Like, I'm not going to do that much research on it. I'm going to read up about it here and there and kind of spitball it. But this is not a news site. This is not a news source. This is just people having a conversation about anything and everything. And, don't be afraid to write in comments and chime in, but leave that hate off and just be open to other people having a different opinion about certain things. Like, I'm already certain comments right now that I have to block, which I probably won't in the future. I just want those idiots to say what they want to say. But just people being angry for no fucking reason. And that's cool, I guess. I mean, I guess that's what, the power of a podcast is. People just, I don't know, they want to be heard 24/7. But anyways, that's the explanation for Genius Brain Podcast. This is why we switched over. This is why I didn't do the announcement. And so I hope you guys are here to stay. Remember, this is just vlogs on crack. Take me with you on your everyday. Take me with you on your commute when you work out or whatever. But we're gonna have some dope conversations that's gonna get you thinking and gonna get you laughing. I promise you that. So remember, check us out on iTunes, Spotify, Castbox, and all other audio platforms. If you're on iTunes, please give us that 5-star because I'm not ashamed to ask for that little help. The YouTube channel really isn't making money, and I'm just sucking some dick. You know what I'm saying? Salty. This is a very weird note to end on.